The interview that stopped the show. The studio lights blazed a brilliant white, the kind of glow that made everything feel a little surreal, like the world was made of glimmering plastic. On stage, Jonathan Knox, America's reigning king of late-night charisma, adjusted his tie, tapped his mug twice, his signature tick, and leaned toward his latest guest with that boyish smirk that had sold 1 million ad slots. Across from him sat a man who, on paper, shouldn't have been interesting. No blockbuster films, no scandal, no TikTok dance. Just a name, Elias Gray, a former financial analyst turned anonymous motivational letter writer. The invitation had been a gamble, one the network had only approved after Elias's story went viral, thanks to a teenager's TikTok video titled, "This note stopped me from ending my life." Now he was here, slouched, quiet, a ghost in a charity store blazer. Jonathan cleared his throat theatrically. "So, Elias, I've interviewed everyone from astronauts to alpaca whisperers, but you might be the first guest who almost didn't show up because you lost your bus fare. Is that true?" Polite laughter from the audience. Elias smiled, eyes distant. "Yes," he said softly, "but I didn't lose it. I gave it to a man outside the station. Said he needed to get home more than I did." The laughter wavered. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. The cue card in his hand was now as useful as a rubber fork. This man didn't do punchlines. "Well," Knox said, pivoting, "you've made quite the impression online. Thousands of people sharing these anonymous letters you've been leaving on park benches. No one even knew your name until 2 weeks ago. What made you start?" Elias blinked slowly. The studio felt quieter, like the walls themselves were listening. "Now, it wasn't about starting something," he said. "It was about stopping something." Now that line hit differently. The audience stilled. Jonathan set the cue card down. His usual rhythm cracked. "Stopping what?" he asked. Elias looked up. His eyes weren't dramatic or teary. Just steady, tired, honest. "Myself?" he said. "I was going to end my life. 4 years ago, under the 13th Street Bridge. Coldest night of the year. No one would have found me until spring, but someone found me first. An old man with a cardboard sign." The room went airless. Jonathan leaned in, elbows on the desk. His signature mug remained untouched. "What did the sign say?" Elias reached into his coat and pulled out a tattered scrap. The edges were chewed by time, and the ink had faded like breath on a mirror. He unfolded it slowly. It read, "You matter. Maybe not to the world, but maybe to the person reading this." Silence. Total silence. Not the kind that follows bad jokes or commercial breaks, but the kind that descends when something sacred has just been shared. Jonathan sat back and exhaled. The camera lights stayed on, but the whole show seemed suspended in that one fragile truth. "I never met him again," Elias continued. "I tried. Walked that bridge every day. Never saw him. But I started writing my own signs, started leaving them behind, just in case someone else was waiting for a reason not to jump." A single sob echoed in the back of the audience. No one laughed now. The producer's voice crackled faintly in Jonathan's earpiece. Wrap soon. Move to next segment." Jonathan didn't move. Instead, he took off his mic, stood, walked around the desk, and sat beside Elias. "Forget the segment," he said. "Tell me everything." And just like that, for the first time in his 20-year career, Jonathan Knox halted a live broadcast, not for ratings, not for scandal, but for a story that reminded everyone watching at home that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones who walk quietly among us. The cardboard prophet before the bench, before the letters, before the late-night show and the cardboard miracle, Elias Gray was a man with everything. Not everything like yachts and champagne, although at one point he did accidentally spill Veuve Clicquot on a Rolex. No. Elias had the kind of everything that made people jealous in a quiet, seething way. He had a corner office with real mahogany, none of that IKEA imitation wood. He had a fiancée who made Sunday feel like a song. He had investments with the kind of interest rates that made calculators sweat. And then, one by one, like dominoes flicked by fate's cruel fingertip, everything fell. It started with a phone call. His mother's voice, shaking, a hospital, his father gone. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. One moment, shopping for oranges. The next, just gone. Then the accident. His fiancée Sophie was driving to meet him for dinner. He was late. She left without her seatbelt on, annoyed. A deer ran across the road. The airbag didn't deploy. She died before the ambulance arrived, and after that, the lights in Elias's world didn't dim, they shattered. He stopped showing up to work. Stopped answering his phone. Emails piled up like dead leaves. By the time his assistant dared to enter his apartment, he was found surrounded by pizza boxes, open liquor bottles, and a TV that played static because he'd forgotten how to change the channel. It didn't take long for the job to vanish. The condo followed, then the car, then the friends who stopped calling when he stopped pretending to be okay. Elias Gray became one of the invisible people, a name no one remembered, a face that didn't register. The man on the sidewalk you pretend not to see when your Uber pulls up. And still, he walked. Every day. Miles and miles. Sometimes to nowhere. Sometimes just to forget he existed. It was on one of those walks on the coldest night of the year that Elias made his choice. The bridge didn't look particularly poetic. Just rusted steel and old graffiti, but it had height. And water. That's all he needed. He sat on the ledge, legs swinging, wondering if his last thought would be about Sophie or his father, or whether anyone would find his body in time for the evening news. And that's when he heard the cough. Not a dramatic cough. Not a soul-stirring moment. Just a wheezy, phlegm-filled hack that made Elias glance sideways in irritation. The man who stood there looked like he had been built by leftover parts from other people. Layers of jackets, a beard like a bird's nest, and eyes so pale they looked like diluted SNOMULT. He didn't say a word. Just held out the cardboard. At first, Elias thought it was a joke, some kind of desperate panhandling tactic. But then he read the words, "You matter." Maybe not to the world, but maybe to the person reading this. And the man nodded once. Just once. As if confirming something that had been undecided until then. Elias asked him, "Why would you write that?" And the man, in a voice that sounded like dust being blown off a vinyl record, replied, "Because someone wrote it for me once." Then he turned and walked away. No grand exit, no magical glow. Just a man, in too many jackets, disappearing into the snowstorm. Elias stayed on that bridge until sunrise. He didn't jump. He never saw that man again, but he never let go of that sign either. Years later, when Elias finally found a place to sleep that wasn't concrete, when he had learned the names of the shelter workers, when he began to pick up scraps of hope like loose change, he remembered that sign, and then he made one of his own, not to save anyone. Not yet. But just to see what it felt like to leave behind something other than a footprint. He left his first note on a park bench outside the library. It read, "You're not a burden. You're a story that's still being written." He didn't stick around to see who found it. He didn't even think anyone would read it. But the next day, there was another note on the same bench. Different handwriting. "Thank you. I was going to end my story today. Not anymore." That was how it began. Elias Gray, once a man no one noticed, became the quiet author of hope in strangers' pockets. But the memory of the cardboard prophet never left him, Who was that man? Why was he there? How many others had he saved? And was Elias meant to carry that torch now? He didn't know, but he kept writing. Notes from the bench. Some stories begin with grand decisions. A ring, a revolution, a war cry. Elias's began with a bench. It wasn't even a particularly nice bench. The kind that creaked in the rain and had more gum under it than paint on top. But it was consistent. A small wooden anchor in a chaotic world. He chose it because no one else did. It sat crooked outside the city library, facing a lamppost that buzzed during thunderstorms. The kind of place where nobody expected anything good to happen. And yet, it did. The first note had felt like a fluke. Maybe someone was just being polite. But when Elias returned the next week, 3 more notes had appeared. One was scribbled on the back of a Chinese takeout menu. You're the reason I didn't give my daughter away. She's 4 now. She dances. Another, written in careful cursive on blue stationery. I saw your message. I'm still scared. But I'm still here. I guess that counts for something. And the third, shaky handwriting, nearly illegible. Are you real? Please write again. That one pierced him. Because once upon a time, Elias had felt the same way. Like maybe kindness was a rumor people told each other to sleep better at night. He began writing every week, sometimes twice. Sometimes every day. Each note was different. No copies, no printed templates. Just Elias, a pen, and his past bleeding into ink. He wrote them in libraries, coffee shops, bathroom stalls, sometimes with tears, sometimes with fury, but always with honesty. You are not the worst thing you've done. Your feelings are valid, even the ugly ones. You can start over as many times as you need. Surviving doesn't mean you failed. It means you're trying. He signed none of them. He just left them on benches, bathroom mirrors, inside cereal boxes, folded into books at thrift stores, even once inside a packet of allergy medicine. And slowly, without him knowing, his notes began to travel. A girl in Milwaukee found one inside a second-hand hoodie. A grandfather in Tulsa discovered one on the seat of a Greyhound bus. A barista in Seattle opened her tip jar and found a folded piece of notebook paper that read, "Today might suck, but so have you, and you're still amazing." People started photographing them, sharing them, hashtagging them, hashtag letters from nowhere, hashtag whoeasy, hashtag bench notes. He didn't have a phone, didn't use social media, but the ripple he created had become a wave. What Elias couldn't know, was how many lives his words began to touch, like the high school janitor in Nevada, who found a note taped to the back of a mop closet door that said, "You are seen, you are needed. Don't let them convince you otherwise." That janitor, Harold, had been planning to leave a final note of his own that day. Instead, he stayed. And the next day, he cleaned that school like it was a cathedral, or the 19-year-old barista named Cass in Ohio, who found a note stuck inside the poetry section of her campus library. It read, "Someone out there loves your laugh. Don't silence it for people who don't." She took that note home, framed it, and came out to her family the same week. They didn't take it well, but she didn't crumble. And then there was the soldier, overseas Private Isaac Romero, who found one inside a care package meant for someone else. The note was simple. Hold on, just one more day. And if tomorrow sucks too, one more after that. He taped it inside his helmet. Elias knew none of this. To him, the notes were just therapy. A ritual. A way to matter without needing permission. He was still in and out of shelters, still nameless to most. But he was no longer hopeless. Then, one rainy afternoon, he met her. The girl from the video. Her name was Marley Quinn, 17. Pink hair, hoodie too big for her. She approached him slowly, cautiously, holding something in her hand. It was a note. One of his carefully laminated. I was gonna jump, she said. But this? I don't know. I thought maybe someone like you had already been there. And if you were still breathing, maybe I could too. Elias stared at her. She didn't cry. Neither did he. She just nodded once. And handed him something. A smartphone. I made a video. I didn't say your name or anything. Just your words. They need to be heard. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't ready to be known, to be seen. But Marley just grinned. Too late. You've already saved too many of us. Viral kindness. It started with a video. No filters. No music. Just a girl with pink hair, a quiet voice, and a folded piece of notebook paper held up like a protest sign. The caption read, "He saved me." You don't have to know his name to believe what he wrote. And then she read it aloud. Word for word. You matter. Maybe not to the world, but maybe to the person reading this. That was it. Less than 30 seconds. But in those 30 seconds, a world exhausted by filters, fakery, and curated perfection. Pause. The video hit 1 million views in 2 days. By the end of the week, it had over 17 million. TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, Threads, Discord. It was like the internet had finally remembered what it was like to feel something real. Comments flooded in. Who is this guy? I needed this today. Like, really needed it. I just sat in my car and cried for 10 minutes. I'm printing this and putting it on my fridge. Do we know where he is? I want to hug this man. And somewhere in a shelter in Cleveland, Elias was alphabetizing canned goods and had no idea he was becoming a folk hero. The movement had no official name. But people started calling it the Note Project, the Whisper Network, or simply, Have You Been Used Yet? Strangers started leaving their own notes. At bus stops, under windshield wipers, in waiting rooms, in restrooms, libraries, schools, prisons, airports. It became a silent revolution of kindness. But unlike most viral trends, this one didn't fizzle out in a week. It grew. In Vancouver, a teacher handed out printed notes every Monday morning. In Berlin, a man tied uplifting messages to helium balloons and released them into the sky. In Rio, someone painted a mural. You are more than the worst thing that's happened to you. In Tokyo, a group of students formed a club not to discuss books or test scores, but to write anonymous notes to classmates they thought were struggling. One note read, Your silence doesn't mean you're empty. Sometimes it means you're full of things that don't have words yet. Everywhere, people shared their own versions of Elias's words. Some copied his originals. Others created new ones, inspired by the same raw honesty. But one question remained: who was the man behind the words? Marley, after her video went supernova, got interview requests from every outlet. You can name and 5 you can't. She refused. Them all. This isn't about me, she said. It's about the message. And the man who gave it to me without asking for anything back. But the world didn't care. It had to know. Online detectives scoured shelters, public benches, security, footage, and handwriting samples, and one of them got close. Really close. Her name was Tanya Cross, an independent documentary filmmaker with a knack for finding stories no one else could see. She didn't want likes or fame. She wanted truth, and she found him. Elias. Sitting under a busted streetlight, eating a peanut butter sandwich, scribbling in his notebook. Her team filmed from a respectful distance, just enough to capture his face, his hands, the way he folded a note and left it gently on a bench. When the teaser was uploaded, it had no name, no voice, just 7 seconds of a man doing something small and sacred. But the internet recognized him. The coat, the walk, The deliberate kindness in his gestures. And the world went crazy. Memes, fan art, thread essays, conspiracy theories. Some compared him to Banksy. Others said he was the modern Mr. Rogers. A few declared him the patron saint of lost people, but Elias still had no idea. Until one day, a man named Rami, a volunteer at the shelter, handed him an old iPad and said, "I think you should see this." Elias resisted. He didn't want screens, or praise, or pressure, but curiosity. Curiosity is a stubborn little whisper. He tapped play. First, Marley's video, then another, and another. Then Tanya's 7-second teaser. His face, his coat, his hands, his note. He sat there, the iPad trembling in his lap, while thousands of comments floated by like digital prayers. "Whoever this man is, thank you. I was going to give up. Then I found your words. You saved my sister. My mom left one of your notes on my desk before she passed. It still smells like her perfume." And for the first time, in a very long time, Elias wept. Not the quiet, poetic kind, but the messy, shoulder-shaking kind. The kind that spills years of hurt and healing all over the floor. When he finally looked up, eyes red, voice hoarse, Rima asked one simple question. "What do you want to do now?" Elias didn't know, but for the first time, he wanted to find out. The knock at the shelter fame didn't arrive with a spotlight or a limo. It arrived as a knock on a metal door, on a Tuesday that smelled like cabbage soup and snow. Elias was organizing canned peas alphabetically, not because it mattered, but because it was something to do when your thoughts got loud. When Remi popped his head into the pantry. "Hey, someone's here to see you." Elias paused mid-pee. "Who?" "Documentary people. Film crew, fancy shoes. One of them's wearing a scarf indoors. You know the type." Elias sighed. "I didn't ask for this." Remi grinned. "Nope, but apparently you changed the world, so now they want to point cameras at your face." He didn't want it. The attention. The noise. The second-hand sincerity. He had told Marley she could post the video, yes, but only if she didn't name him. He was the message, not the messenger, but the world never asks nicely when it's curious. Elias stepped into the common room. 3 people stood waiting. The first was Tanya Cross, the filmmaker who had tracked him down. She wore the scarf. She also wore the look of someone who had practiced what she would say, but knew it still wouldn't be enough. "Mr. Gray," she said gently, "I don't want to exploit you. I think people need to hear you. In your own voice, unedited, unfiltered, real." The second was a younger man, probably fresh out of college, clutching a notepad like it was a Bible. "We're offering a 6-figure deal for exclusive rights," he said. Before even saying hello. Elias blinked. The third didn't speak. Just held up a phone with a video playing. It was a girl in a hospital bed, bald from chemo, holding one of his notes and whispering, "Thank you for helping me fight today." Elias sat down slowly. The world was not a place he had been part of for some time, and now it was asking for interviews and contracts and lighting setups? "No," he said, the college kid deflated like a party balloon with a pinhole. "But," Elias added, "I'll talk, just not for money. Not for fame. I'll do it for her." He pointed to the phone. "And for anyone who ever thought they were too broken to be worth anything." Tanya smiled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Then let's tell your story, your way." They filmed in the back of the shelter. No makeup, no script. Just a single light, one microphone, and Elias sitting in the same battered hoodie he'd worn for years. He spoke. Slowly. Not like a performer, but like a man picking up pieces of a mirror and showing them to the world. One shard at a time. He told them about Sophie, about his father, about the night on the bridge, about the man with the cardboard sign, and the first note he ever wrote. It wasn't meant to change the world, he said. It was meant to keep me alive. He didn't cry, but Tanya did that, so did the camera guy. The video aired 2 weeks later, titled simply, "The Man with a Cardboard Heart." Within hours, the world exploded again. Messages poured in. People wrote poems, songs, art pieces, murals. A woman in New Delhi started a nonprofit that delivered handwritten letters to patients in hospice. Musician in Toronto wrote a song using only words from Elias's notes. Even a politician in Sweden quoted him during a national address, saying, "We must build a country where no one forgets their worth." As one American man once wrote, "You can start over as many times as you need." But Elias? He stayed at the shelter. He still helped alphabetize peas. Still wrote notes on scraps. Still left them tucked into library books and under windshields. Tanya returned a month later, surprised to find him unchanged. "You could be doing TED Talks," she said. "Podcasts, keynotes." Elias shrugged. "I'm not interested in being heard. I'm interested in people being reminded they're not alone." And then came the letter. A yellowed envelope. No return address. Just a single sentence on the note inside. "You remembered." So did I. The handwriting was unmistakable. The man from the bridge. He was out there. Somewhere. The one who walked away. The letter had no return address, no stamp, no fingerprints. Just a whisper folded into paper. "You remembered." So did I. Elias stared at the words for days. He kept the letter folded in his coat pocket like it was a compass, even though it pointed in no direction. He had never stopped wondering about the man on the bridge, the one with the cardboard sign who'd saved him without asking why he needed saving. Now, years later, the echo had returned. He had to find him. You're going to track down a mystery guy with a Sharpie and a beard who vanished like a ghost? Rami raised an eyebrow. Elias just shrugged. "It's not the beard I remember, it's the way he stood. Like the world had already broken him, but he stayed standing anyway." So he left the shelter. Packed what little he had, 3 pens, 2 hoodies, a notebook half full of unsent notes, and began walking. He didn't know where to start. But sometimes, when you're searching for the past, you start where it left you. He went back to the bridge. It hadn't changed much. Same rust, same graffiti. Same smell of cold water and cigarette smoke. Elias sat on the ledge, not to jump, but to remember. Then he noticed it. A small piece of cardboard wedged between 2 beams. Water damaged, moldy at the corners, but still legible. Keep walking. You're closer than you think. His heart kicked like it had found the ignition. He started asking questions. Local soup kitchens, shelters, thrift shops. Every time he showed the old note or described the man, people shook their heads, until he met Gloria. She worked at a church that doubled as a winter shelter. 60s. Denim skirt. No nonsense. Could balance a cup of coffee on a donation bin like a circus act. Tall guy, lots of coats, mumbled like he'd swallowed gravel. Elias's pulse quickened. "That's him." She snapped her fingers. "Calls himself Jonas. Shows up every few winters. Leaves weird little signs all over the place. Never asks for anything. Just disappears like fog." "Do you know where he is now?" Gloria chewed her lip. "Last I heard, he was out by the Willow District. Old rail yard." Elias thanked her, left a note on the church bathroom mirror, and caught the next bus west. The Willow District was where forgotten buildings went to die. A graveyard of brick and rust. But it had corners, shadows, places a man could vanish into. Without leaving a footprint. He searched for hours. Nothing. Until he heard the cough. That same unmistakable rattle. Like a saxophone filled with sandpaper. He turned the corner and there he was. Same layers of jackets, same bird's nest beard, same eyes that looked like they'd watched the end of the world, and just quietly stepped over it. Jonas looked at him and smiled. Took you long enough. Elias didn't speak. He just walked up and hugged him. No words, no explanations. Just two men who had kept each other alive without knowing how or why. They sat on milk crates in silence for a while. The kind of silence that only exists between people who've been broken in the same places. Then Elias asked, "Why did you do it?" That night, the sign, me, Jonas picked at his sleeve. Because someone did it for me once. Under a different bridge, with a different sign. We just pass it on. Elias nodded. Why didn't you come forward? Jonas shrugged. I'm not here to be found. I'm here to leave breadcrumbs. You followed one. That's enough. They talked for hours about life, pain, the weird geometry of grief, and how the smallest act can become someone's lifeline. Before Elias left, Jonas handed him something. A blank sign. Just cardboard. Clean. Your turn now? Elias took it. I've already started. Jonas grinned. Good. Then maybe neither of us has to do this forever. The sign that changed the world, the studio, was silent again. But this time, it wasn't because of surprise or shock. It was reverence. Elias Gray sat in the same chair as before, across from Jonathan Knox, who had once stopped the show mid-broadcast. After hearing Elias's first words, now they were backed by Elias's request for a second and final conversation. No cue cards. No commercials. Just two men, 2 mugs of lukewarm tea, and 1,000 stories between them. Jonathan smiled gently. You sure about this? Elias nodded. It's time. He was older now. Not in years, but in weight. The kind of aging that happens when you carry other people's sorrow as gently as your own. He wore the same coat cleaner and shoes donated by someone who had once found one of his notes in a laundromat. Jonathan leaned forward. You said? There was something you wanted to share with the world. Elias reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of cardboard. Wasn't a note. It was blank. He held it up. This is yours, he said. Not mine. I've written my share. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. But now it's your turn. The audience leaned in. You don't need to be famous, or fixed, or fearless. You just need to care enough to leave a mark that says, I see you. I hear you. I believe you matter. He placed the blank sign on the desk. I used to think I had nothing left to give, that I was disposable. But a man once saved me with a cardboard sign, and I spent the rest of my life writing signs for others. Now, I want to see what happens when all of us do. Jonathan's voice caught. What are you calling it? Elias smiled. The Sign Project. That night, Elias's second interview aired in over 43 countries. Within hours, people around the world began making their own signs. Billboards were replaced with handwritten encouragements. Airports handed out cardboard postcards. Hospitals, schools, subways, grocery stores, everywhere, people left messages. You're allowed to rest. Healing isn't linear. I don't know you, but I love you anyway. If you're reading this, you've already survived something. A bakery in Dublin printed a message inside every box. You are needed, especially on days that don't feel like it. A small town in Oregon replaced its welcome sign with one that simply said, You matter here. And in a remote village in Nepal, a monk who had seen the interview via satellite translated Elias's quote into Tibetan and painted it on the monastery wall. The world didn't get louder. It got kinder. Elias never trademarked it. He never charged a dime. He lived quietly, traveled occasionally, visited shelters and libraries in places where silence weighed the heaviest. He always left something behind. A note. A sign, a reminder. People called him a prophet, a saint, a movement, but he never called himself anything. Just a man with a pen and a memory of cardboard that saved him. Years later, long after hashtags faded and viral trends evolved into whatever came next, Elias sat in a small bookstore cafe, watching a teenager tape a handwritten note to a bulletin board. He smiled out at Reed. "I don't know who needs this. Maybe I do, but if you're standing here, keep going." He didn't interrupt, didn't introduce himself. He just left a second note beside it. "We never walk alone, even when we think we do." And walked out into the world that had once left him behind, now full of signs, not just cardboard, but human.